and welcome back to my channel, Error 404 Mental Health Not Found, your one-stop shop for all things mental health. I am your delightfully annoying host, Tim, and today I have what I believe to be a hashtag relatable topic for us. But before we get into that, I do want to cover our bases really quick. I want to let you all know, I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I am not a mental health professional of any kind. I cannot diagnose you for anything, nor can I prescribe or medicate you for anything. So please do not ask. If you do feel like you or someone you know is having a mental health crisis of any kind, please stop what you're doing and seek help. There's many ways you can do that. One of those ways is to check the show notes of my episodes and my homepage, where I have provided numbers and links to mental health professionals who can help you with that. If you don't feel comfortable going to friends or family, you can also just dial 911 on your phone and get connected to a licensed professional who will be able to assist you if you are having any kind of crisis. So please, you are too important to the world. Please, if you feel like you are having any kind of crisis, stop what you're doing right now and take those steps. Remember, you are loved, you are needed, and this world is better with you in it. Now, this week's topic, I have to give credit where credit's due. My husband, my beautiful, amazing, loving, wonderful husband, actually gave me this topic to discuss. I was kind of having a little bit of a block as to what I should discuss next. I had so many different things on my list that I just kind of didn't know where to go. And so he mentioned this one to me, and I agreed that it was something I think we can all relate to. We are going to be discussing Imposter Syndrome. Imposter Syndrome. And is that somebody in a mask? Is that somebody wearing false glasses and a fake nose? Are they an imposter? No, not that kind of imposter. We are going to be discussing what the actual imposter syndrome is and how it can affect us in our daily lives and really what can be done about it. I found the research into this one as I was making my outline for this one very interesting. I did put out some feelers into the Facebook Hive Mind as well, just kind of asking some people, what do you feel that you have or do in your daily life that kind of makes you feel like an imposter in your daily routine. And I got some really interesting answers back, so I'm going to be sharing some of those with you as well. So let's dive right into it. We are going to jump into what is imposter syndrome. Every morning, I get out of bed, I start getting ready for work. I look in the mirror and I wonder, can I handle this job? Am I qualified enough? Competent enough? I think I am. But what does he think? I think we're going to be exposed as a fraud. So which one of us is the imposter? Okay, so what is imposter syndrome? What is it actually? Well, I kind of feel like there is a medical definition and everything, but I don't feel like that truly does it justice. But that's where we're going to start. So I have it pulled up here just because I couldn't remember it all off the top of my head. But I'm going to read kind of what that definition is for you, and then I'm going to set it down and we're going to kind of expand on that a little bit. So the actual definition, it's a psychological phenomenon where individuals doubt their abilities, skills, and accomplishments, or even their talents, and have a fear of being exposed as a fraud despite evidence of their competence. They often attribute their success to external factors rather than their own abilities, and they may feel like they don't deserve their achievements. So there it is. That's kind of the definition. Hold on a sec. But what does that really mean to us? What does that mean as far as, you know, our daily lives, our personal lives, our work lives, our professional lives, our school lives, whatever the case may be? What does that mean to us? Well, it basically is us telling ourselves that we aren't actually good enough, that we aren't deserving of accolades that we may receive for doing good work. When we do something good for the community, for another person, or if you finish a project at work fast and well, and you're recognized for it, we tend to kind of push that off to other factors. I have had people who have said that they believe that they constantly say, well, you know, this wasn't just me, so-and-so was involved as well, or this was just luck of the draw, I just happened to have the time to get it done, or I'm just doing my job. That was a big one I got. A lot of people responded with, I'm just doing my job, rather than saying, thank you. Thank you for recognizing the work that I've done. It's like if you have this ability, let's say like a superpower ability. You can hold fire in your hands. You can create fire out of nothing and hold it in your hands. And somebody says, well, that's cool. I've never met somebody who can hold fire in their hands, who can create fire out of nothing. That's really cool. And instead of saying, yeah, you know, that is kind of cool, thank you, you say, yeah, but you know, Ed down the street, he can turn invisible. Don't do that. We need to learn as a society not to do that, and we need to learn to be able to say thank you and be okay with being recognized for the things that we have accomplished in our lives, whether they be something in your personal life or your professional life. I know that I often feel like an imposter at work. I often feel like because I didn't go to school for my job. I didn't get that formal education for that specific position that I run. I feel like I don't deserve it sometimes, and that when I do something good, it's purely happenstance or luck, that I just happen to be able to do my job well. I'm getting a little better at that, but I think that's something that we all kind of struggle with in our professional lives. I oftentimes also feel like a fraud in my own marriage sometimes. I feel like I look at my husband, who is this amazingly wonderful man, and I think to myself, how did I get lucky enough to have somebody who loves me like that? Somebody so wonderful, somebody so handsome, somebody so amazing. I feel like a fraud in my own marriage sometimes. And it can lead to depression. It can definitely lead to depression because I sometimes feel like I'm not good enough for him. That I don't deserve him and all of this love that he puts on me. And I need to work on that in my personal life. But that was another one that I got from a lot of people on Facebook, was that they feel like their interpersonal relationships with people sometimes suffer because they sabotage them in their own minds, because they act like they aren't deserving of this friend, or they aren't deserving of this lover, they aren't deserving of this companionship. When the reality is, if they didn't want to be with you, they wouldn't be with you. And sometimes that's just hard to accept. that yes, you legitimately deserve this person. I'm working on that. I know a lot of you are probably working on that as well. It's a hard one to deal with, and I do have to learn to really accept the love that I'm given, especially since I didn't really have too much of that in my childhood growing up and whatnot. It's a little difficult for me, but I'm learning and I'm moving on, and it's going to be good as I learn to grow. And my husband has just been the most supportive person in the world about it. So I'm going to keep updating you guys on that as we go here. But now we're going to talk about some of the symptoms and the signs of imposter syndrome and how they can present, because it's not just one simple way that imposter syndrome happens. There's a number of different factors that are involved. So I just kind of want to go through those really quick as well. So I kind of want to start with the causes of imposter syndrome here. And I'm going to focus in, and there's really a much larger number of them, but I'm going to focus in on 6 specific causes of imposter syndrome. So the first cause that I want to discuss is perfectionism. There are people who are constantly striving for that sky-high goal of perfectionism, and they're chasing that perfect unicorn, as it were. And the problem with that is you're never, ever going to achieve perfection. It's just never going to happen for any of us. No matter how hard you work at it, no matter how good you are at your job, you're never going to hit perfection. And so when they continuously strive for that perfection and they're constantly chasing it, then they end up feeling like everything they do isn't good enough because they believe it should be perfect, when that reality is that is an unattainable goal, but they don't necessarily see it as unattainable. So the fact that they're not able to get to this goal, get to this way of doing things, and being able to raise their work or their whatever to that level of perfection, they oftentimes feel like they are an imposter because they should be able to do that and they're not accomplishing that. So number 1, perfectionism. The second cause that I want to discuss is comparison. So some people, are constantly peeking their head over the fence at work. They're constantly looking into other departments and seeing these other people who are able to do their job with such ease and such grace, and they can't figure out how these people are doing that. They feel like they're not able to accomplish the same thing, and they don't know why, when these other people are making it look so easy to do it, and they don't necessarily know, what did this other person have to struggle through to be able to be this good at what they were doing, because at some point I guarantee you that person probably felt like an imposter as well. But if you're constantly peeking over the fence and you're looking at everybody else and you're comparing yourself to everyone else you see, you're always going to find somebody who is better at something than you are. And if that is how you are determining your worth, that's a problem. That's a problem, because you should not determine your worth based on somebody else and somebody else's achievements. Those achievements are their own. And whatever they've done to be able to strive to get to those achievements is theirs. So it's really important that we don't compare ourselves to others, and that we don't try and emulate another person's work just because they make it look easy, especially if we don't know, kind of what's behind that. So number 2, comparison. So the third cause that I want to talk about is attribution. And these are the people who are constantly chalking their accomplishments up to luck or timing instead of taking credit for their own achievements and their own hustle. These type of people are afraid that somebody is going to find them out as being some kind of evil mastermind behind some scheme to make themselves look good, when in reality it really is just their skills and their talents and their hustle that is allowing them to accomplish these goals. But they don't take that credit. They chalk it up to that timing or just luck of the draw, and they constantly feel like they need to attribute for that, for fear of being found out, when the only thing they've been found out for is that they're good at their job. 3, attribution. So number 4 kind of takes us out of the workplace a little bit, although it can happen in the workplace as well. But the next cause, number 4, I want to talk about is personality traits. And for somebody like me who has severe ADHD, and yes, I am medicated for it, but I still find social gatherings incredibly awkward at times. I still find them very intimidating. I'm always afraid that I'm not going to know what to say. And so when I do say something and people react to it in a positive manner, that's when I feel like an imposter, because I know that I'm socially awkward. I know that more often than not, I say the wrong things. And it's something I've dealt with my entire life, and I've been judged for a lot. And I don't mean to say the wrong things. I don't mean to say badly timed things. But when I do get something right, if I tell a joke and people are laughing, I really feel like an imposter in these situations, because I'm afraid people are going to look at me and go, well, that's not who he normally is. When in reality, they just, they don't understand me necessarily, or they do understand me, or they just don't get it in the moment. And it can be a little rough, but those personality traits can really affect the feeling of imposter syndrome when you do something right, or you do say something right, and you're afraid that people are going to recognize that you don't normally do that. So personality traits, number 4. Number 5, the 5th cause I want to discuss are cultural factors. If you're someone like me who was not raised and is not used to being in an environment where, say, things are super fancy and you're expected to, use the right spoon at the right time, and you're supposed to dress a specific way for, your aperitifs, and then you're for dinner, and then change for dessert, and all these other cultural norms that some people in society see as their normal. When I get thrust into those environments, I don't know how to act. I get really clammed up. I close up quite a bit. I do my best to muddle through it. I take cues from other people as much as I can, but it's really tough, and I do feel like an imposter in those situations, because I like to dress up fancy as much as the next person, but I don't care how much Gilded Age I've watched. I still don't know which spoon to use when, and I just use one spoon for everything. Why not? Wicked clean. Goes from tomato soup to ice cream real nice. But these cultural factors can be a big one, especially if you're being thrust into an environment where you're not used to it. That will make imposter syndrome rage. Number 5, cultural factors. All right, and so number 6. Number 6 for the factors of imposter syndrome is going to be past experience. And this played more of a role in imposter syndrome than I would have originally thought when I was doing some research into this. And I started reading up on kind of like how your past experience can really affect how it affects you and how it can affect you with imposter syndrome. And it really made sense to me. If you're in an environment or you're going back to an environment, maybe you had a bad critique, or you're going somewhere where you once made a big old oopsie, and you're afraid that these things are going to happen again, even though you know you've grown. Even though you know you've learned from whatever mistakes you've made, and that it's not likely that that's going to happen again, you still feel like an imposter going back into these situations because you're afraid that people are going to look at you and they're going to say, that's the guy who got up on stage and farted. Because, I have no shame. But when you're afraid that other people are going to see these things in you, and you don't present that, that's a big factor for imposter syndrome. So, number six, big one, past experience. All right, so we discussed 6 of the main causes of imposter syndrome. So now I want to talk about the different types of imposter syndrome. There are 5 main types of imposter syndrome, and the first one that we're going to talk about kind of harkens back to the causes, and it is that perfectionist. Going back to that perfectionist, that person who is always striving for perfection and chasing that perfect unicorn that is just completely unattainable out there. That's one type of imposter syndrome, is those perfectionists. The second type of imposter syndrome is the expert. So this is a person who is known or supposed to know everything about something specific, whether it's how something is operated at work or a specific line of questioning, or whatever it may be. They're the go-to person, and it is very, very common for the expert, as it were, to feel like they are an imposter, being that they may feel like they're not an expert and that they're winging it, and they're afraid that they're going to be found out as somebody who isn't as in the know as everybody thinks they are, when in reality they truly are the expert on whatever the case may be. So, number 2 type of imposter syndrome, the expert. The third type of imposter syndrome is called the soloist. And this is the type of person who constantly feels like they need to go at it alone. And that they should be able to accomplish whatever the thing is that needs to be accomplished by themselves. And if they can't accomplish it by themselves, then that's what makes them feel like an imposter. Like they shouldn't need help doing, A, B, or C, and accomplishing, 1, 2, and 3 without the help of others. And we all know that is oftentimes a very unattainable thing to kind of deal with. We all need help from other people, especially in our professional environments where so much of what we do is based off of the work of somebody else. So we always need help, and these are the kind of people who when they fail to be able to do something entirely on their own, they feel like an imposter. So, number 3, the soloist. The fourth type of imposter syndrome is the natural genius. And they may not be like an actual genius, but these are people who are known for being able to figure things out on their own, maybe faster or better than other people can. And if they come across a situation where they're not able to figure something out or something doesn't make sense to them, that's kind of when they start to, feel like that imposter in their own lives and in their own skin, because they are known for being able to figure these things out. And when they can't do it, they feel like they're not them, and people are expecting them to be able to do it. And as a society, we should not be holding people to that standard. We should not be holding any specific individual to a standard of being able to know everything or figure everything out. That's just not something we should do. Number 4, the natural genius. And finally, that brings us to the 5th type of imposter syndrome, and this one's called the superhero. This is the kind of person who is just naturally good at things like sports or playing an instrument, or things like that, and they don't necessarily have the formal training behind it, but maybe it clicked for them for one reason or another, and they're expected to be able to perform these duties, these skills, these talents at a moment's notice. And if they are not doing that, that's when they start to feel like an imposter, because they're expected to, and they're afraid that people are going to see that, hey, I'm just a regular person and I just happen to be good at some things, but I'm not necessarily good at everything. Again, we should not be holding people to these standards. It is bonkers to me that we can hold somebody to this ridiculous standard of, oh, you're this superhero who's, gonna save the football team because they're so good at it. Don't do that. Don't put that kind of pressure on people, because that's where imposter syndrome begins. That's how it begins. It's not good. Don't do that. Number 5. The superhero. All right, so we've discussed the causes. We've discussed the 5 main types of imposter syndrome. Next, we're going to talk about the impact of imposter syndrome on people's lives. I had, in my outline for this episode, I had made an entire list of ways that it impacts you, and I was going back over it, and I felt like it was very mechanical for me to just go down the list and read these, especially since some of them are just so obvious, and so I thought we would just have more of an open discussion about it. A lot of the impact that imposter syndrome can have ranges, and it differs depending on, what atmosphere are you having this imposter syndrome in. Is it your personal life? Is it your professional life? Is it something in between? And it can affect the way we do our jobs. If we are expected to be able to do something, not because we were actually trained to do it, but because somebody just assumed we should be able to, and that was that. I've come across that several times in my line of work, and I've really felt like an imposter when I was asked to do, can you do this? Or I want you to do this. And I was afraid to say, well, I've never done this before. I don't know how to do this. And so I end up winging it. And a lot of times it has worked out in my favor. But that truly was, and this is not the imposter syndrome talking, that truly was luck that I was able to muddle my way through these things. And a lot of these things happened when I first started in the line of work that I'm in, and now a lot of these things are second nature to me. But when we push those expectations on to other employees or our associates or our teammates, when they haven't had that training to be able to do X, Y, and Z, that's going to make them feel like an imposter, because you're saying, well, you expect them to be able to do this, and they don't want to disappoint, so they're going to try and do it. And these things can have consequences, especially in a professional environment. It can definitely have consequences in that professional environment where if you get something wrong, you haven't done your job right. You're risking your job at that point, and hoping that you can get this right. In a personal environment, in relationships, when you feel like you're not good enough for the person that you're with, as I often do, it can lead to a lot of misunderstanding with the other person, feeling like they're doing something wrong, or that their love for you isn't good enough, when that's not the case at all. And when it comes to my husband, I have to work really hard to do my best, and I know I have a lot of work to do, but I have to do my best to make sure he understands how much I adore him for everything he does, but also mostly for the love and support that he provides to me. And that's my journey that I'm working on, and I'm doing it through therapy. I'm pushing myself really to be able to have these discussions, but and it's difficult. It really is difficult, but I do feel like an imposter in my own marriage sometimes, and I don't like that feeling, and I don't like more so I don't like what it does to my husband, who doesn't deserve that, because he, again, I cannot stress this enough, is the single most amazing man in the entire world. But this can also extend to our friendships. It can extend to our social interactions, when we go out to parties, when we meet strangers. I've gone to social gatherings where I'm meeting strangers, but one of my friends maybe told me, hey, I told these people about you. You remember that joke you said, that thing you said? Oh, I told them, they thought it was hilarious. They can't wait to meet you. That kind of pressure can be so ridiculous on a person, and cause that imposter syndrome as well, because now we're expected to perform a certain way. We're expected to be a certain way. And if we don't achieve that, all of a sudden we look like we're not the person they were told we were going to be. So the impact on this can be very wide-ranging, and it can always lead to things like depression and anxiety, which I just did a episode on anxiety, and it's anxiety is a monster. It really is that monster. And in the episode, I do discuss a little bit about how we don't want to get rid of our anxiety entirely, because it is a defense mechanism for our bodies. It's letting us focus and be aware in times where we should be, in times where we might be in danger, things like that. But the social anxiety to perform, the work anxiety to perform, these all contribute to us not speaking up when we are faced with a challenge that we have never had to face before, where we don't want to ask for help because we don't want to look like that person who's needy. These things can lead to that imposter syndrome, because if you get it right, great. But now you're expected to do it again. Now all of the sudden you are the expert on it. You are the natural genius on it, because, oh, they just found out I didn't have any personal training on this particular thing, but I did it, and I did it well. Well, now you're the go-to. And what happens if it doesn't work out the next time? So imposter syndrome can affect every single portion of our lives. And in my research for this episode, I found out so much about it that really made me stop and think about how much of this pressure do we put on ourselves? How many times a day can we speak up for ourselves and say, I don't think I should be doing this because I haven't done this before. I haven't received the proper training on this before, or I don't feel comfortable doing this in this situation, instead of actually just doing it and hoping for the best. it's not good for us. It's not good for our self-esteem. It can bring us into depression and, again, anxiety. So we need to be more self-aware in these situations so we can try and minimize that. And by minimizing it, we're going to be able to express ourselves more. And so these things that we would normally feel imposter syndrome about, where we might be faced with a challenge at work or a challenge in a social environment, if we're expressing that we've never done these things before and we're going into it with that understanding and with that attitude, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to learn it. You're going to be taught. You're going to experience it in real time with the understanding that it is okay to get it wrong. And the anxiety and stress that relieves, that takes off of our shoulders, is just incredible. It's one of the many things that I'm working on, is being able to speak up a little bit for myself. I had a visit with one of my superiors today at the store and going through my lab at work, and as he was going through everything, my store was freshly remodeled, my lab was remodeled, I'm still getting everything put where I need it to be put and organized. He was going through it and he's like, this is great, this is amazing, this is what I expect from you, because you always perform at this high rate. And I didn't stop to say, well, you don't understand the stress and anxiety that I put myself through to get this here. To get it to this point. And I'm not done, with my ADHD, I'm never done. But I didn't say that to him, but I also didn't take the compliment. I also tried to push it off. It's just my job. This is what I do. This is what I do. When the reality is, yes, I pushed myself very hard and I did a lot more to my mental health than I should have to get as organized as it was. But I did do it. And I should have said, thank you. I should have said, thank you for recognizing that I try and perform at a top whatever as often as I can. Thank you for recognizing the fact that, less than 2 weeks ago, this was just a pile of dust and now it is a full lab. I didn't, and I should. But, that's that imposter syndrome. I felt like an imposter because I knew what I had to do to get things looking the way they did. And we shouldn't have to do that to ourselves. We really shouldn't have to do that. These impacts of imposter syndrome are so wide-ranging. I just challenge all of you to be more aware of that and in your own lives, and stop and think about it before you commit to anything, before you actually do anything. Voice your concerns, even if it's just saying, I've never done this before, but I'm happy to try. Whatever the case may be, just be more aware of these situations and try to avoid that imposter syndrome. You'll be amazed at how much stress that takes off of you. All right, so what is the treatment for imposter syndrome? How do you treat it? Well, there isn't one. There's no medication involved in treatment for imposter syndrome. The best ways you can learn to really help deal with this, number one, something I'm always going to recommend, I've recommended this in a lot of my videos, therapy. Therapy is this wonderful, wonderful thing. I have this great love-hate relationship with my therapist. I sometimes hate how hard she pushes me to really open myself up, but at the same time I love her for it because it has made such an amazing difference in my life. I can't say enough good things about therapy, but when you are feeling like you are expected to be somebody that you're not, then learning kind of how to express that and being able to stop that is really crucial. And the therapist is a great resource to help learn to do that. The other thing is self-awareness, mindfulness, being aware of when you're in these situations. And again, therapy can help make you aware of these situations, but it's about you taking the time to stop in these situations and say, hey, this is not something I've learned. This is not something I've had formal training on. This is not a situation that I feel comfortable in. And being able to express that in a way that helps the other person, whether it is in a social environment or your professional environment, be able to really understand where you're coming from on this. So that expectations can be adjusted. And it doesn't mean that you're not willing to do the work. It doesn't mean that you're not willing to try and do what you're being asked to do. It's you saying, hey, I haven't had this formal training. I'm willing to do it, but I need to learn how to do it correctly, and that's going to take me a little bit of time. So if you have an expectation that it needs to be done at this specific time in this specific way, maybe I'm not the one to go to right now, but let me learn it. I can be the one you go to in the future. That kind of thing. Or if you're going into a social environment where you know that people are going to have a certain expectation of you based on something, somebody else has told them about you, telling that person, hey, maybe please don't say that to people. Don't set that expectation, because now I feel like I have to be on. I have to be present in a way that I'm not comfortable with, rather than try and just be myself. And every time you express this, you are breaking down that imposter syndrome. You are no longer having to try and be somebody that you're not, or having to try and accomplish something that you don't know how to do, because you have expressed that this isn't your forte, at least not yet. And that you need to be eased into these situations a little bit more. And then the third thing is going to be meditation. And it sounds kind of weird. I'm not big on meditation myself. Not that I have a problem with it in any way, shape, or form. I'm not against it at all. It's just not something I have ever been able to find adequate time to do for myself, and I probably should. I need to find a way that allows me to meditate and self-reflect upon myself a little more, and that would be, it's another healthy way of learning what your limitations are. And when you combine that with being able to express those limitations in a healthy and productive way, you're going to find that those moments of imposter syndrome in your life are going to go down so far. And it's really going to help reduce the anxiety and the stress that comes along with the imposter syndrome of having to try and be something that maybe you're not, or that you're not used to having to try and do, or that you haven't, learned how to do. But if you're looking for like a quick fix, like a medication or something, it just doesn't exist. That's not something that's there. So I guess my big thing for you guys, my big challenge for you guys would be to take that time to self-reflect, to really, on a daily basis, as you're going through your day, ask yourself, is this something that I'm comfortable with? Is this something I've done before? Is this something I actually know how to do, like the way they're expecting me to do it? Or is this something that I haven't been taught how to do? And then being okay and comfortable with telling other people that. If you do, it's going to be great. But I challenge all of you to at least start identifying the moments in your days where this imposter syndrome kind of starts to crop up. And as you start to identify them, you're going to become more and more comfortable with the idea of preventing it, of speaking up and doing something about it. And it really will make a change in your life. I can guarantee that. So, again, I challenge you all to do that. And I would also say, take some time for yourself, where you're not necessarily talking to somebody else, where you're not involving other people. Take some time for self-reflection upon yourself, because it's really going to help you learn those limitations and be able to express them in a healthy way. So that's what I have. That's imposter syndrome. I hope you guys learned something from it. I know this is, again, something we've all dealt with in the past. and probably still do to this day. But it's something that we can work through, and it's something that we can learn to handle on a daily basis in a productive way. So I would say in the comments, guys, if you have a minute, please make a comment about the times during your day that make you feel like an imposter. And I guarantee you that you're gonna see other people who can relate to that. You're gonna see a lot of the same answer probably. But yeah, please, by all means, put it in the comments. Tell me what makes you feel like an imposter. What do you say to people during the day that triggers your imposter syndrome? And talk to each other about it. Really, just talk to each other about it, because you're going to see that there's so much more in common with each other, that we all have this imposter syndrome to some extent or another. So yeah, leave those comments for me. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful mental health week. And remember, life is just a movie. And our minds, well, they're the twist that we never saw coming. Bye. Thank you.